Hey, I'm Stephanie, and it's time to talk about makeup. Welcome to my October 22 in 22 Project Pan update. For this project, I shop my makeup stash each month to find 22 products to use 22 times within 2 months so that I can get to know my makeup better. I find that using these things in such rapid succession over and over again really helps me to get to know my cosmetics and my application preferences better. And lately, I've added the twist of choosing products with similar claims and pitting them head to head so that I can see which one I like better. These updates come in 2 installments. Today, I will be sharing speed reviews and swatches and application footage for all 22 of these products because I hit my usage goal on all of them, and that means all of them will be rolling out of the project. In my next video, I'll be shopping my stash for the next 22 products I'll be rolling on in, and I'll explain why I'm choosing them. So make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification button if that sounds interesting to you, or if you simply enjoy style and beauty content that places more weight on enjoying the things that we have instead of always chasing the newest thing. Not that there's anything wrong with the newest thing, I'm just on a low buy, so I'm focusing on what I have, and it's more fun than you'd think. But we have 22 items to talk about today, so this video could run on the long side. Make sure you've got a cup of tea or something mundane to do in the background, like wash your makeup brushes or cook dinner or something. Or you can always check the timestamps because I always try to make it easy for you to skip to the information that's most relevant for you. Let's dive right in. Let's begin at the beginning with primers. I chose to pit 2 mattifying primers against each other this month, the e.l.f. Matte Putty Primer and the Becca Ever Matte Poreless Priming Perfector. I chose mattifying primers because at the time it was still hot and humid and I wanted to take down as much shine as possible on my face in the hot and humid weather. Unfortunately, I was kind of disappointed by both of these products because neither of them made a big enough difference to really warrant using them. And I usually eschew putting unnecessary layers of product on my face when it comes to makeup just because I want my makeup to look as natural as possible. The e.l.f. Matte Putty Primer gave me quite a pleasant application experience. In fact, it felt more like a moisturizer than a putty, which kind of surprised me because I was expecting this to feel like a putty just based on the name. But it melted into my skin quite nicely, making it feel a lot more like a moisturizer than, the the aforementioned putty. So this actually felt like a very natural finish on my face, especially underneath makeup. I felt like the makeup sat very nicely over it. However, I don't really feel like it extended the matteness of my foundations significantly, if at all. I didn't really notice much of a difference. So using this as like a matte primer, I don't know. I just didn't see enough of a difference to impress me much. The Becca Ever Matte Poreless Priming Perfector, on the other hand, did manage to mattify my T-zone for a bit longer. Not long enough, but longer. And you can see here, maybe it's thicker. So it comes out and it kind of keeps its shape a little bit. So I did find that because of the thicker consistency that a tapping motion was better to really press this in to my pores around my T-zone than a rubbing motion was. Because if I rubbed it in, it would tug at my skin too much. So this one was best applied by tapping it in. Ultimately, I felt like the weight of the product actually slightly increased the appearance of texture on my face underneath foundation, and it made my makeup look heavier, at least in comparison to the e.l.f. primer or with no primer at all. So ultimately, neither of these primers did enough to mattify my face, and both of them, I noticed, were moving my sunscreen, even if I just tapped them in. Now, I let my sunscreen sit for a while, so it's like set onto my face, but I have like a new magic mirror of horror that shows you every nook and cranny and crevice on your face. And It also emphasizes the fact that my physical mineral sunscreen leaves a very slight white cast on my face. And when I would apply these products over it and watch in the mirror, I could actually watch the sunscreen move. And that was no matter how gently I patted either of these primers in, I could watch that sunscreen move. So that really is concerning to me. I don't think it was just these specific products that do that either. I suspect it would happen with nearly anything I apply over that sunscreen, including foundations and color cosmetics. But I think it's because I use a physical mineral sunscreen, so I have some thinking to do because I take sun protection pretty seriously. To sum up the primers, I think I'm going to give away the Becca primer because although it did slightly delay the shine on my face and was thus a little bit more effective than the e.l.f., it didn't prevent it for long enough to warrant wearing it, especially because I don't feel like my makeup looked better over top of it. In fact, I felt like my makeup looked better without any primer at all than with this one. I am, however, going to keep the e.l.f. Matte Putty Primer for now because I want to put it on the chopping block to test with other primers. But its survival in my collection is by no means guaranteed. I also chose 2 eyeshadow primers to pit against each other. The first one was what has been my favorite to date. It is the Urban Decay Eyeshadow Primer Potion, the original formula, and I pitted it against Lorac's Behind the Scenes Eye Primer. Urban Decay's Primer Potion, the original, remains the best primer overall for me with my oily, hooded, deep-set eyelids. But the Lorac primer was also excellent in very specific circumstances. In fact, some of my shadow adhered even better to the Lorac. For example, my Pat McGrath Special shades adhered more strongly, and my Charlotte Tilbury and Too Faced eyeshadows were more intense over this Lorac Behind the Scenes primer. However, my Gucci eyeshadows were quite patchy over the Lorac, and my Natasha Denona metallics and shimmers creased more with the Lorac as well. So all in all, Urban Decay's formula generally works better for me over a wide range of eyeshadows. And even in the cases where the Lorac outperformed the Urban Decay was still really a very close second. So I will be keeping both of these, and I will continue to lean on Urban Decay most of the time, using the Lorac primer just in those specific cases where it performs slightly better. But I don't think I would go out and repurchase this Lorac primer, since the Urban Decay Primer Potion is more of a generalist product that still performs excellently in any situation I've thrown at it this far. So I do plan on using this up because I like it, but Urban Decay is still the clear winner for me. And because it was bronze season for me, I thought I would compare 2 bronzing primers. So I chose Laura Mercier's Foundation Primer, the Radiance Bronze version, and the Dr. Hauschka Translucent Bronzing Tint. As it turns out, although these are both bronzing products, they're not really comparable. The Laura Mercier Radiance Bronze Primer is a true primer, adding glow to the skin before applying foundation. My favorite way to use this was to take a very small amount and simply place it where the sun naturally hits my face. So the top of my forehead, the bridge of my nose, the height of my cheekbones, things like that. If I use too much of this, it would look quite metallic. Ultimately, that's not a problem if you're just putting a lot of foundation over it, but considering the fact that I like light foundation coverage, using too much of this product gave me too metallic of a finish. So in this case, for me, a little goes a long way for my taste, and I definitely think that less is more with this particular primer, but it did give me a beautiful result. The Dr. Hauschka Translucent Bronzing Tint is truly that, a tint. It soaks into my skin and feels like skincare. It almost feels like a stain, but it ultimately very easily washes off in the first stage of my double cleanse, so it doesn't actually stain the skin. However, it does have great staying power once it sets, so I would take it down my neck when my foundation looked too dark for my current skin tone, and it would nicely kind of even everything out color-wise. This product also looks nice over makeup as a liquid bronzer, blending out nicely despite the fact that it looks so pigmented when it's first applied, and I find that it doesn't look streaky or anything. It's very easy to blend out. Here's a comparison of the two. So Laura Mercier bronzing primer is on this hand, and the Dr. Hauschka bronzing tint is on this hand. All in all, I've decided to give away the Laura Mercier Radiance Bronzing Primer and to keep the Dr. Hauschka Translucent Bronzing Tint. I really enjoyed the Laura Mercier primer, but I have beautiful luminizers and bronzers that I have so much more fun applying. I don't know, I think it's because applying primers just psychologically isn't quite as exciting to me as applying something like, a beautiful luminizer and then a beautiful bronzer. And because I ultimately get the same effect with products that are just more fun to me, I think the Laura Mercier primer would just get more use in someone else's makeup bag because it really is a beautiful product. The Dr. Hauschka tint, on the other hand, serves many purposes for me. I can simply use it on its own without any other makeup to look more sun-kissed. I can use it as a bronzer, and if a foundation happens to be slightly too dark for my skin tone, if it's not quite as late in the summer, then I can bring this tint down my neck to make everything look a little bit more natural. So this is a real winning product for me. Our next category is foundation, or in this case, a BB and a CC cream. I chose to use the Dr. Jart BB Beauty Balm and pit it against the CC cream from Erborian. This category was really hard for me. I mentioned in an earlier video that my skin has been going through some really drastic changes recently. It's becoming oilier, and everything I used to think I knew about foundation on my particular skin has changed. So I'm not quite sure how reliable my opinions are right now, but I'm trying everything out anyway. The Dr. Jart BB Beauty Balm was far too glowy for me, leaving my skin looking almost sweaty looking. Considering the fact that this past summer was already very hot and humid, that just wasn't the look I was going for. I tried applying it with a wet sponge, and that did give me the best evenness, and it gave a nice light coverage, which is exactly my taste. But at the same time, the wet sponge made it all even glowier. So then, that was a reason to not like that application method. Plus, this was completely faded by the end of the day, leaving only very slight color residue in the large pores of my T-zone. Application of this product with a brush was really streaky. It's almost like the product wanted to sit on top of my skin instead of meld with it. That's not a quality that I like in a base product, but to be fair, this product never did that before my skin started changing. So I'm not sure if it's maybe just my skin, because I'm using the same brushes and it's the same product. The only thing that has changed is my skin. So I suspect this might actually just be changes in my body. But the finish of this product was less glowy when I applied it with a brush, but my T-zone got way too oily, way too quickly, and it just looked really, really, really sweaty. Applying it with my fingers also gave me a streaky finish, and I really had to work it into the skin to make sure it just didn't gather in my pores. All in all, this product really did like to kind of gather in the large pores of my T-zone, and it's never done that before. So I suspect really my skin changes have just really affected the way this works for me. Now, I know that the description I just gave you that makes this product sound like a disaster, but to be fair, I'm just being really picky. The streaks that I saw were subtle. The color gathering in my pores was probably only visible to me because I was using that crazy new mirror. And the only thing I think anyone that was just looking at me from a normal conversational distance would have noticed would be the extreme glowiness of my skin, or maybe the fact that it would fade on my nose pretty early in the day. I blow my nose a lot, so that happens with a lot of foundations, but then my nose would kind of look red and then the rest of my face would look even. So that wasn't really that great. This Dr. Jart BB Beauty Balm used to work a whole lot better for me back in the days when I had dry skin. I used to really like this, but now that my skin has turned oily, I feel like it's just not melding with my skin, almost like the oil is forming a layer, a barrier between my skin and the product. And so it's just not setting as prettily as it used to. So I think I'm going to give this to a friend with dry skin. The Erborian CC Cream, on the other hand, was glorious, but interesting. It's one of those creams where the pigment only develops when you use friction to apply it because the pigment beads inside the cream only activate once they're broken, and simple pressure won't do it. You can't just dab or tap the product onto the skin with your fingers or a wet or dry sponge. You have to use friction and apply it to the skin with a rubbing motion. Using a dry sponge worked very nicely though, as long as I slid the sponge over the skin to generate friction. It also worked well with a brush and with my fingers. The finish of this was great. Initially, it was slightly matte, but I wouldn't call it like an extreme matte. It was a very, very natural matte, and it did gradually turn dewier throughout the day. So I felt all in all, it was a quite natural finish. By the end of the day, my T-zone was a little too oily for my liking, but I felt like it was in a completely normal range and that I could easily powder it down to take away some of the shine. None of the product gathered in my pores, so I was a huge fan of that because that's been a big issue for me lately with all of my foundations. And this one was a pleasure to wear, still looking good after 8 hours. My only problem with this one was the shade. I have the shade Doré, and this is me at my darkest. So as my tan began to fade, this product was simply too dark and I looked kind of absurd. And that's where that Dr. Hauschka bronzing tint came in handy. The Erborian CC Cream is going to stay in my collection, but I think it's going to hibernate until next summer because the shade really is me at my darkest. After my low buy is over, I liked this so much that I would actually consider buying it in the lighter shade so that I could use the two of them together as a mixer, you know, when my skin is changing, and then I could use this one in the summer and that one in the winter. But I do think it's a shame that they only have 3 shades. They only have light, medium, and dark in this, and that's horrible because the formula is so nice. Now on to the bane of my existence. Concealers. The changes in my skin are also affecting everything I thought I knew about concealers, so honestly, I'm not sure how much I can objectively say about them. But I tried them. I compared the IT Cosmetics Bye Bye Under Eye Concealer in Medium, which my aunt gave to me, and my Bobbi Brown Creamy Concealer in Natural, which I purchased as a part of this travel palette. Spoiler alert, just like every concealer I have ever tried, neither of these concealers on its own has enough coverage to hide the dark circles under my eyes. The IT Cosmetics formula is a thick paste, but it becomes easy to blend once it warms up to skin temperature. I only used the tiniest amount, and a little goes such a long way with this product. It meshes decently with my Tarte Colored Clay Under Eye Corrector, which is my favorite color corrector to date. And I do think this product is solid. It's a little bit heavier than I would like, but not by much. And it does weigh down the skin underneath my eyes a little bit, but not by much. And it's beginning to get hard to find a concealer that I'm really happy with. My main concern with this product is that if you watched my most recent Partners in Cream Project Pan update, you'll know that I decluttered one of the foundations my aunt gave me because I suspected it might have been too old because it wasn't really working like it should. Now, I received this concealer from her at the same time as that foundation, and I kind of wonder if this also might be too old, but it's not like it smells funny. It works just fine. So I just don't know because, I mean, just because the foundation was off doesn't mean this one would be off. This one could have been new when she gave it to me. I really don't know. Part of me is thinking it's perfectly fine because it still functions. But part of me is wondering if, like, I don't know, a colony of like mold or bugs or aliens might be setting up shop inside this tube. And that kind of makes me want to toss it. I don't know, what would you do? The Bobbi Brown concealer, on the other hand, always ended up being kind of hard to blend. I tried applying it with my fingers, with a brush, dabbing it on with my fingers, and then tapping it in with a sponge. It never looked horrible, but it also never looked great. And it always looked kind of dry. Some days it even looked a little bit patchy. And when I smiled, I don't know, it kind of like made my skin crinkly, made me look a little bit older than I am. So I'm not crazy about it. I even tried using it in conjunction with its own corrector. And I think the corrector is the same formula. So like neither of these products is horrible. Neither of it's a catastrophe. But I'm not sure. Like I think this might be better for someone with maybe oilier under eyes. It's funny, my skin's been getting oilier, but my under eyes have been getting drier. So I feel like this isn't the ideal product for me. Because these things are in a palette and I use the other products in here, I'm going to keep it. But if it was just on its own, I would probably pass it on. As for color cosmetics, I decided to compare two face palettes. This Charlotte Tilbury Instant Look in a Palette, the Gorgeous Glowing Beauty Edition, and this Hourglass Ambient Lighting Edit in the Unlocked version. My plan was to compare these two as standalone palettes that I could use for color all over the face, including the eyes. With the Charlotte Tilbury palette, that's easy because it includes 3 eyeshadows, in addition to the bronzer, the highlighter, and 2 blushes. But the Hourglass palette, on the other hand, only contains cheek products. It's got 2 finishing powders, a bronzer, a highlighter, and then 2 blushes. Now, I often use face powders on my eyes. I use bronzer and highlighter and blush as eyeshadows all the time. So I was eager to see if I could truly use this as a standalone palette as well when I'm traveling. That just gives me more options. I have long been a fan of the Charlotte Tilbury Instant Look in a Palette format because I travel so much and it has everything I need to create beautiful looks. The only downside is that it doesn't offer a whole lot of options. Every look I create with this palette looks pretty, but similar. But all in all, it's very convenient and creates cute looks, so I really have fun with these, especially when I'm on the road. The Hourglass palette, on the other hand, really is best suited to the cheeks and the face. I got a slight bit of irritation when I used the blushes and the bronzer as eyeshadows, so this really is just purely a complexion palette for me, and that's good to know. The 2 glosses I compared this month were the Fenty Beauty Pro Kisser Luscious Lip Balm in the shade Latte Lips and this Tarte Lip Sculptor Lip Gloss in the shade VIP. These glosses are very different. The Fenty gloss is a thin formula with a lot of slip. It manages to make my lips look juicy without making them feel heavy or sticky, and it's extremely comfortable to wear. However, I wouldn't say it's nourishing, which is weird to me because most of the time when I wear a gloss this comfortable, I feel like it hydrates my lips. This one doesn't feel like it dries my lips, but it doesn't feel like it hydrates them either. The Tarte gloss, on the other hand, is much more pigmented and feels heavier and nourishing. Although it's comfortable, its opacity made me nervous. I blow my nose a lot, and I was always worried that I would smudge the gloss or that it would get on my teeth, but my worst fear of all came true. The gloss would gather in a ring around the inside of my lips, and that gives me the heebie-jeebies. So I think I'm going to pass this one on. I don't think it's a bad gloss. The ring on the inside of my lips wasn't extreme or anything, but out of the 2, they're similar colors, but the Fenty is just easier to wear, which means I'm going to reach for it over the Tarte any day. And here are the comparison swatches. This is the Fenty, this is the Tarte gloss. The Fenty is more brown, nude, and the Tarte is more of a pink color. But both of them are pretty nude on me. Both of them are easy colors to wear, but because they kind of have the same effect when worn on the face, and the Fenty is just easier for me to wear, this is the one that I'm going to pick every time. So that's why this one's sticking around. I also had 2 coral-colored lippies in the project this month. This Charlotte Tilbury Matte Revolution lipstick in the shade Miranda May, and the Buxom lip polish in the shade Nancy. Now, I usually get along really well with the Charlotte Tilbury Matte Revolution formula. It's not my favorite of favorites, but Charlotte definitely makes a great lippy. However, this color in the formula simply does not work for me. I have constantly dry lips, and this shade just sticks to every dry patch, making my lips look really flaky. It's simply uneven and unflattering on me. So I'm going to give this to someone with normally hydrated lips. The Buxom lip polish, on the other hand, was easy to wear, glossing over my dry patches, plumping my lips, and making them look juicy. This isn't a color I wear often, but I do think it suits me, especially in the summer, so I want to make a point to wear it more often, especially in warm weather, because this formula has a very cooling sort of feeling to it, so it's really nice to wear when it's hot outside. And here are the comparison swatches. The Charlotte Tilbury here we can see is very opaque and matte. The Buxom lip formula is very glossy and sheer. And as someone who gravitates towards nude lipsticks for the most part, this one's just easier for me to wear. Because it's sheer, and it still does brighten my lips. They definitely still look coral when I wear this. It's just easier for me to wear than this. And I think the reason the Matte Revolution formula doesn't work for me in this particular color is because the pigments are just so apparent that they get caught. They kind of collect in my lip lines and in the flakiness on my lips because they're just so extremely dry. So I think the Matte Revolution formula works for me as long as the color isn't too extreme. But in a color that's as extreme as this one, it just doesn't sit right on my lips. So I am going to be happy to pass this on to someone who will enjoy it. I also chose 2 everyday lipsticks to wear during this project. And by everyday, I mean easy to wear because they're comfortable and they're not going to slip all over my face or get on my teeth. And let's face it, they're nude colors because that's pretty much all I wear every day. But when I tell you what these are, they have French names, so feel free to laugh heartily at me in the comments. This one from Sisley is Le Feutre Rouge, and the shade is 11, Beige Tahiti. And this one is from Givenchy. It is the Le Rouge Sheer Velvet formula in 16, Nude Boisé. By the way, I never know with French. See, is it better to at least attempt a French pronunciation even though I know I'm going to butcher it because it's being filtered through the German language part of my brain? Or is it better to just say it with a straight up North American accent? I don't know. The Sisley Beige Tahiti lipstick has a comfortable, nourishing feeling formula that sits easily on the lips and doesn't sink into my lip lines. It's easy and comfortable to wear, it looks beautiful, but there's nothing really about the formula that stands out to me as being particularly noteworthy. I have some formulas of lipstick that make me reach for certain lippies over and over again, but this formula isn't one of them. That being said, it's still very nice. So, I have it in a color that I like, so I am going to keep it because I do get use out of it. It's just not one of the standout lip products that I own. As for the Givenchy lipstick, this one is definitely one of my favorites. This one has a formula of note. Givenchy's Sheer Velvet formula is matte, but it has a blurring quality. Not only does it look really nice and blurring on the lips, not only does it kind of mildly blur lip lines, but it also smells scrumptious to me, kind of like a pleasantly burnt dessert, a flambé something or other. And it's comfortable to wear. I enjoy this one so much that at some point in the future, I could even imagine getting this in 1 or 2 other colors because although this one is in the nude family, it is relatively pink for me. So I would prefer maybe this formula in a more nude shade and then maybe one in a more brown tone shade. And then I'd feel like I had everything I need for my blurring lip needs. Wow, we've really powered through and we're at the end of the comparison products. The remaining 4 products were just simply individual items that I wanted to get to know better. And the first of them is this Tom Ford Shade and Illuminate Glow Stick. It is a blush and a highlighter. The first of these solitary items was the Tom Ford Shade and Illuminate Glow Stick. The type of summer makeup look I created with this was right up my alley. The blush looks like it will be extremely pigmented and difficult to wear, but it blends out so easily and melts into the skin to create a beautifully sunburned flush with a natural skin-like finish. When I look at this product in the bullet, it does look intimidating to me, but blended out, it's not intimidating at all. The highlighter shade is a bit dark for me in the winter, but the Golden Champagne highlighter creates a beautiful, subtle sparkle without ever looking metallic or emphasizing texture, so it's definitely a win. My eyeshadow palette for the month was the Natasha Denona Bronze Palette. And now that I've done my makeup with this for an entire month, I finally realized why I pretty much only ever used this as a reservoir of beautiful single eyeshadows. Nearly every look I created with this palette looked kind of the same. Beautiful, but the same. Even though I did my makeup 22 times with this palette, I was only really able to create about 3 or 4 different looks. I mean, yes, each look was a little bit different because I used different shadows. I used every single shadow in the palette several times, but the vibe was always the same. This palette generally runs very kind of like orangey gold and red, not really bronze in my opinion. In fact, I probably would have named it something like the Blood Rain palette instead, because it reminds me of when we have blood rain here in Munich. That's when the sands from the Sahara get blown up into the atmosphere and then it rains down over Europe. And when that happens, the air turns this very ominous orangey rusty color, and this palette kind of reminds me of that. I mean, if you look at this palette, everything in here is either a variation on rust or copper or gold, except for maybe these 2 random kind of blue-purple shades. So yes, you can create varying intensities in looks from everyday kind of office makeup to a dramatic evening smoky eye, but they all end up being versions of the same thing. Luckily, that same thing is always beautiful. And I don't know if you can tell, I'm trying to hold the palette in a way that you can see both the palette head on and also the reflection in the mirror. So for example, this shade here looks gold when you look at it directly, but if you look at it in the mirror's reflection, you can see it is duochrome. It has kind of a pink tint to it. So there is dimensionality in this palette, and I think that's really great. Some of my favorite shadows in this palette were actually the 2 bluish purple shades. Both of these have some red in the base, which works really well with the red and rust-colored shades. I particularly liked pairing them with the shades Magma and Palladium, but I felt like they worked pretty well with everything. But my favorite shade of all in the palette, I think, ended up being Palladium. And this was my favorite as a one-and-done shadow all over the lid. That kind of surprised me because I don't usually choose a shade that's any darker than my skin tone as a one-and-done shadow, just because my eyes are very deep set and I have a heavy brown bone, so my eyes are often cast in shadow by the brow bone. So I feel like it behooves me to use lighter colors to counteract that shadow, but I feel like Palladium is an exception, and maybe that's because of its shine, but there's just something special about it. Now we're down to the last 2 products, the first of which was the Ipanema Sunset Glow Oil from Sol de Janeiro. Now, this is basically like a body highlighter, and at least as I understood it from the marketing materials, it's like the sort of thing you'd like wear when you're going out in the evening to make yourself look super glowy. Like maybe you'd put on a nice sleeveless dress and just kind of like smear it on your shoulders and your arms and maybe your legs to look like a glorious glowing supermodel. And to be fair, I had only tried it like 3 times and I hadn't really enjoyed it, but I hadn't ever really given it a chance. Like I would like dab a little bit on like my collarbones and be like, this is me wearing body oil. Like, cause I don't know, something about me, it was like, it was a real jump for me to wear body oil. But I was like, you know what?
This is the time. I'm going to wear it this summer, and I'm going to be a glowy, gorgeous supermodel, and it's going to be awesome. I'm going to put it in this project, and I'm going to wear it 22 times.
And I wore it 3 times because I hated it. I mean, I fully committed 3 times. I smeared it all over my décolleté. I smeared it down my arms, and oh my gosh, I hated it. I hated it so much that I found myself wishing that the fleas of 1,000 camels would infest the armpits of anybody who had had even the remotest thing to do with the development of that product, because it was sticky and it never set down. And then it would get all over your clothes, make them look greasy and weird. And then it would get in your hair and make it look like you hadn't washed your hair in like a year. And then like, not only that, but like the smell made me want to retch. Like, I know that a lot of people love the Sol de Janeiro smell, and I have friends who wear the Boom Boom cream and they smell wonderful. But on me, that scent goes rancid. And so not only did it like make me want to vomit, but like I looked like I had to vomit because I just looked like a sweaty mess with my hair all greasy, my clothes all greasy. It was horrible. I gave it away to someone who likes that sort of thing and who smells beautiful when they wear it. So goodbye and good riddance to that thing. The Jo Malone Wood Sage and Sea Salt fragrance, on the other hand, was so much fun to wear. I used the scent a total of 30 times, and I loved every minute of it. The scent was very crisp, so I could imagine wearing this while walking down a beach in summer, but I could also imagine wearing it while jumping in a pile of leaves that I raked together in autumn. It's easy to wear, it's light and airy, but it has just enough sharpness to make itself known. So I'm going to keep on using this deluxe sample until it's gone, and it's crazy how much I have left in here because I used it 30 times and I still have, I'd say I used about a third of it. It's hard for me to show you from this angle because the liquid tips, but I used about a third of it. So that means there's about 90 uses in a little deluxe sample like this. So that's pretty cool to know. And that, my friend, is everything I'm rolling out this month. If you want to see what I'm rolling in, make sure you're subscribed and have that notification bell turned on so that you'll know as soon as the next video goes live. And of course, while you're at it, I would really appreciate it if you would give this video a thumbs up. Not only does it help my channel, but it helps me to know what kind of content you like to see so I can make more of it. I know this was a long one, so thank you for choosing to spend so much of your time with me today. I hope you have a wonderful week and that we can all remember that even stumbling can be a form of moving forward. So let's stumble in style.